Aw, there we go.
Now it's official. All right.
And now we have nothing to say. No, I'm kidding.
Heard everything hilarious we just said, so if we're not funny, you missed it.
Yeah.
All of the humor is gone.
Mm.
Cool. So, trying to kick off this Lightweavers podcast, and today is Wednesday, May 6th. We've got your 4 Lightweaver hosts, and we're going to get a little kickoff from Susie, who's going to share a poem about trust, as this month of May we're tapping into what it really means to trust and how we can, I guess, release attachment to what that might look like. And as a group, we're kind of doing that by allowing our Lightweavers mission to evolve and allowing some conversations and space for flow. So glad you're here with us. Yeah.
Cool. I'd love to read a little something from this book. This book has been monumental in my life. Melanie Beattie has written a few books. The Journey to the Heart. It's daily meditations on the path to freeing your soul. This woman, Melanie Beattie, her son passed away very unexpectedly. So this book was a result of the pain during that experience, and then a road trip that was inspiring her to find new life after the death of her son. So when we open up to May 9th, which I guess is appropriate because it's in the month of May, the title is Trust Each Step. So she writes, stay present for each step of your journey. We don't go from one place to another in a gigantic leap. We get there in increments by going through each feeling, each belief, each experience, one step at a time. Sometimes when we pray for miracles, what we're really praying for is help in skipping steps. We're praying for shortcuts. The simple act of acceptance, of returning to each step of our path, can often bring us the miracle we need. Then we see the truth. The real miracle is one always available to each of us. It's the miracle of acceptance. We can go where we want to go, one step at a time. So stay present for each step of your journey. Trust each stage. Many things are possible for you if you accept that the fastest way is simply one step at a time.
Mm.
And then the next one is Go for the Ride. Maybe we'll read that next time. Just to say, this book is really special to me because a friend of mine gave this to me because it was on the top of her toilet. And I did happen to read one entry, and then I just followed it for consecutive days while I was watching her house and her pet, and it spoke to me. And so she gifted it to me, and it became more like I would just open it and it seemed to be the exact message that I needed to read it that day. And then I started sharing it with my mom. I would say, Mom, our conversation yesterday, listen to what I just read. And she started getting really into it. So then I gifted this book, and so it's kind of been this just wonderful experience. Sometimes, she'll call me and mention that she just read the daily meditation. So that's why I really love daily meditations, because I think they just find you at the right time. Yeah. And it's interesting because just trust, as I read that kind of for the first time, new again, when it says just trust the next step, I think one of the things that we talked about before is sometimes it can be scary because you literally don't know what's ahead. And it can feel really scary, like what's going to support me if I leave what I know and I step into this unknown. It doesn't even look like there's anything to catch me. It doesn't even look like there's anything to step into. And so we kind of talked about that analogy, remember, Eliza, of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when he's in the last part of his journey and he's got to take a step and walk the bridge when there's like nothing underneath. It's like an eternal nothing below, and you can't see it, but when the screen pans out, when he takes a step and he falls a bit, and then he just boom, there's the bridge, and you just see it and kind of manifest in front of you when it looked like there was nothing. So I love that analogy, and I'm really excited to just find out what more people and you guys especially and others have to say about the experience of starting to trust, having faith sometimes when it doesn't look like anything exists. Thanks for letting me read that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that phrase, like leap and the net will appear, as we begin to trust. It is a letting go and a surrender, and it is scary. And someone once told me, because I think for a lot of my life I was trying to leap but also like hold on to the ledge at the same time. She was like, you're gonna beat yourself up a lot if you try to jump but you're simultaneously like grabbing onto the cliff. You're gonna like bump yourself and bruise yourself and like hurt yourself a lot. But if you just fully, completely trust and you take that leap, you will fly. But you have to believe, that you can fly.
Yeah.
And that feels like a bit of what's been going on for me personally lately. A bit of bumping along the cliff, a bit of anger and frustration and confusion coming up as I'm really good at starting projects and gathering people, and then maybe sometimes can be a little stubborn and just want to push through, and then realizing, wow, what seems to want to unfold in this Lightweavers is not going to function in the way that a business or a more masculine system would work. And not only do I need to let go and create space for people to feel really good about what they're sharing, but I need to let go of any attachments that I have to what this is and to what we're creating, and just keep allowing, keep trusting that even if we just started in April and we tried a couple things out and they didn't feel great, it doesn't mean that they're a failure and they're wrong. It's all just a process of learning. And so, as we take those steps, sometimes it's learning, okay, I tried out this direction, and if I hadn't taken those steps, I would have still been stuck, where I was previously. So sometimes it is a matter of taking steps and then reassessing and kind of navigating. And it can be little micro changes that really shift and guide us. Like a ship on a compass, you change the degree that you're moving by just one little notch, and you'll end up over long distances in a very, very far place from where you would have originally been aiming. So that's kind of what's coming through for me. And I feel just grateful for this space and for this group that keeps affirming my own purpose, and just having friendship and having people to talk to through what is a murky and sometimes quite irritating time. So yeah. Yeah.
I think we said at one point, I think it was Joy that said it, that just talking about it and just speaking about it, not only do you get like input or understanding from other people, but it also your voice, listening to your voice and listening to it, it helps give you some clarity as well. So like just keeping a nice safe space for us to be able to voice any issues or anything that comes up. I think, that's something that it didn't take us long to create that trust for ourselves and each other. But, because we were all like willing and able and supportive, I think that really gathered enough courage for us to feel that we were in a very safe, trusting space. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. What is so interesting about trust for me is that it's not trust if it's a sure thing. Like it's very vulnerable to trust, because it's inherently something that like you can't fully know everything and trust, because that's not trust, that's something else, that's knowing, that's like understanding, or whatever you want to call it. But trust is this place of surrender. Like you have to be in a place of surrender and vulnerability to trust. And like faith is really similar. Faith is like that glimmer before you get to trust. Like trust is more a full body, okay, I'm in this, I'm doing this, like I'm fully in it. Faith is like, okay, like there's this like something inside of me that knows this is possible. And trust, I feel like, is that like full body process, that action of stepping into that faith. Like, okay, I'm going to embody this faith that I have and like be full on and take that step into this. I have no idea where I'm going, but I know that that's where I have to go, because something in me is like making me do this. Like I have to do this or else everything else is going to fall apart, even though taking the step makes me feel like I'm falling apart. It's like, okay, I'm falling apart. Great. Like, no matter what, everything is falling apart. And what isn't falling apart is the essence of who I be. Like who I am is what comes out of that. Like trust, like the whole process of stepping into trust is going into the refining fire, that like coming out of that fire is the purest gold. Is like the gold of your essence, the gold of your being, the gold of who you really are. And all that is like, all that is what remains. So anything that's extra, any of these attachments, the holding on to the, you know, when you're talking about holding on to the cliff, to me, it's like there's the raging. I'm always thinking of Niagara Falls. So I'm holding on to I'm trying to jump in the water and let it take me. And I'm trying to hold on to the tree branches at the end too. And I'm like, oh, there's rocks. Oh, there's branches. Oh, it hurts. It's like, just, if you just let go, then it can take you and you can go into the middle of the flow where it's moving the fastest and there's nothing in the way. But you have to jump to get there. You can't step your way in. You have to totally jump and be fully immersed. So it's like trust for me is this full body, 100% I'm all in or I'm not thing.
Yeah, it's like the entire mind, body, soul, right?
Yeah,
Trust, like
everything.
mind, body, and soul, that it will happen the way how it's supposed to happen, right?
This is fascinating, you guys. Can I share a quick story that what you just said, Joy, makes me think of?
Yeah.
Okay, so my senior year of high school, we took a whitewater rafting trip with my senior class. And so we were all on different boats, right? So our guide was super cool. And when we were coming up to like the really intense rapid parts, you know, like we were all told, and they reminded us, listen, in case our boat flips and everyone spills off the boat, hold on to your oar. Like you need that. Don't let that go. And the way the water works in the rapids is that, you know, it's kind of like a cyclical pull and current. So don't fight it. You have your helmet on, you have your life jacket, you're holding onto your oar. Just curl up in a ball and let the water take you, and it'll suck you under and then it'll spit you out. But if you fight it, you know, you're trying to stay above, don't do that, you know? So this is what we were told. And we're all like, okay. So now everybody else went over the rapids and they were fine. But we were like telling our guide, we're like, we want to spill, like we want the adventure of a lifetime, you know? So he's like, okay. You know, little did we know, you know, sometimes we're asking for things and then we're not ready for it. So I was in the front of the boat, and literally all I remember is we just, like, the way our raft was angled, we just hit this rapid and the top of the boat literally like flipped over the bottom. Like I spilled out right away, and people who were in the back were like, the top of the boat was like over our heads. So everybody got dumped except the guide. Everyone's in the water. And all I remember, it's like scary, you know, my heart's beating, like you think you're going to die, you know? And, so I just remember the first thing I did was chuck my oar. You know, I'm like, just throw that away. I need to save myself, you know? And then I remember feeling the pull of the water, and it was so intense. And I'm frantically trying to stay above the water, like, you know, just, and there's noise, there's like whistles blowing, and everybody's like trying to fish people out of the water. But I was just trying so hard to keep my head above the water. And then all of a sudden it hit me, curl up into a ball, like stop the fight, which is essentially surrender, which is essentially accept your predicament. That's part of trust, is like accept where you're at. And then that's where the faith comes in. I had to just have faith that this guide knew what the hell he was talking about. And then the trust part, I love that you said that, was like the full body action of like putting faith to the test is trusting. And so I remember curling up in a ball, and it was super scary because it literally just like sucked you in, like powerless. And it sucked you in. And thank God we had helmets, because I remember the first thing was when there were rocks, obviously at the bottom, and my head just like busted against a rock, you know, and luckily I was like, whoa, thank God for a helmet. And so you get turned around a whole bunch, and then literally it spits you out. Like it just pulls you in and spits you out, you know, and then you're kind of disoriented, like, wait, the jagged rocks were which way? Because I was supposed to swim the other way, you know, but it was so disorienting. And when we finally got back on the boat, you know, he was like, so you guys wanted to get spilled. I told you to keep your oars, and we had to go like chasing oars because half of us just like ditched them. You know what I mean? And he was like, do you see why we said, you know, we gave you the guidelines. We want you to trust us. But it's also funny how we react. You know, it was like I had to sit with, wow, my reaction was get rid of the one thing that I needed to hold on to be part of the team. And then I did the total opposite of what I was told to do, because it was scary to go under, you know, and to let the waters, to go with the flow. That was really scary. So it was kind of cool, because once you trusted, it worked. And they scooped us up, and obviously I'm alive. But yeah, I don't know. I hadn't thought about that memory in a long time, but that was pretty crazy. I guess surrendering is part of trust.
And while you're telling that story, I just got this hit that like this is a metaphor for our experience. Like we get dumped out of the boat all the time. And you know what is our oar? Our daily practice is that oar. What's the first thing we want to chuck when we're feeling like, oh, screw everything, I'm trying to keep my head above water? It's like, hold onto your stinking oar and let go. Like just let go. But hold on to the oar. Like, don't let go of the oar. Let go of everything else. Stop fighting and just hold on to the oar and curl up in a ball and just let it take you. Wow.
I love that. The oar is the daily practice.
It really is.
So funny. I was watching Bakara Wintner's reading, the Sunday reading the other day. Susie turned me on to this. It's this tarot reading, this girl on Instagram, and she was kind of aggressive with her interpretation of the cards that were coming up. She was like, what have you guys been up to this week? Like, what are you getting into? Why haven't you been like on your game? Or I don't know, just kind of berating it. And at first I'm like, that's not me. Like, what's she talking about? And then looking back on it, I was like, wow, I guess it's not that I've done anything. It's my lack of doing things that's been sort of an issue for me the last week or so. Really, I don't know, this whole quarantine has been so fascinating, because I was cleansing for like the first month, and then had some really intense health issues. I freaked out, and then I was like, obviously I should just eat pizza and ice cream right now. That'll make me feel better. And then I just like, you know, threw down my oar, and I was like, I just need comfort right now. And then my sleep schedule has been all over the place, and I've just been feeling like shit, and all this anger is coming up, all this ancestral stuff, like stuff I don't understand. And each of you know that I've really just needed to vent, and like I've called each of you, and I don't think I really ever had friends before that I could share my energetic temperature with in this way, who were a safe space to just listen and then actually offer me, without any judgment, offer me love in the ways that I'm needing it. Because I realize underneath the anger, underneath the frustration, there's a part of me that's really wounded, and it's just seeking to be held, just as, you know, seeking acceptance, and as Joy pointed out to me specifically today, it was like all this anger stuff and like frustration with the light weavers, and she was like, wow, it sounds like a lot of solar plexus stuff. And I know personally I'm dealing with in my own practice, kind of allowing myself to receive money, allowing myself to let go of shame, allowing myself to trust my own power. And as a leader of, starting this Lightweavers network, I think I felt ashamed that I tried to do too much, or I was like pushing people, or that that it was too masculine, that I wanted something more like ego-like. It was like, just try to grow the network and like get everyone involved. And then realizing that it's not about the product, it's about the process. And I wasn't loving myself as much during the process too. And I realized taking on 4 events a week was too much for me personally, and too much for a lot of people. And I think that pushed them away. So it was kind of like my own internal process of trying to push through walls and then getting blocked. But it was happening on an external level, which added this other layer of sort of something public to be, I don't know, ashamed of or embarrassed of. But really, it's once I surrendered, the last couple days, and I, rolled up in a ball or whatever, and I just released, and I reached out to you, each of you, it's felt like, oh yeah, we just need to trust. Then, this isn't about growing numbers. This isn't about perfection. It's not about looking a certain way. It's about being there for each other and in legitimately vulnerable ways, and showing up to feel the feelings and go through the fears and to process hard stuff together. Because these walls that I've hit before, I've just run away from. And having a group like this, hitting a wall, you guys have been like, well, like, let's break down the wall and let's assess and let's work through it. And now it feels like, oh, why was I even freaking out or angry, when I just need to keep trusting that this process is inherently working out for the highest of everyone. And it couldn't be any other way, because this is what's happening. So it just feels like, wow, that story was such a parallel for me personally. But enough about me.
And also, like, additionally, bless that child inside of you, like, so many blessings on her, because there were things that happened that she couldn't control, and it made her feel angry, and she didn't have a way to express that anger. And so now I'm saying this for myself as well, like, yeah, bless you, child, like, thank you for closing yourself down, because now I can actually help you. Like, now, okay, yeah, we got this together. Let's do this now. Like, we saved this for now. Now's the time. And like, just so many blessings for divine timing. That's trust too. Like, trusting that everything unfolded exactly as it needed to, right? So that we could be here and be like, you know what? Time and space don't exist anyways. So we got this. And the walls are coming down. Like, they're coming down. So we might have been hitting walls our whole lives, but they're coming down. Like, bricks don't last forever, especially when you keep hitting them.
Whoa. When we were moving like a little chunk of a brick wall today, which I had to rest in front of my backyard, like where my compost is, to keep the dogs out. And so went to go lift it, like I've done a million times, and one of the bricks just broke off. Like, it literally just like, oh, just like popped off, when this thing has been solid for like centuries. I don't know, this brick wall was super old. That's crazy.
Preach. The walls are coming down. And that's interesting, because that reminds me of the Bible story about Joshua and Jericho, and and marching around these walls and just singing and dancing them down. Like, we don't even have to fight. We don't even have to smash the walls. We literally just keep praying. We keep creating. We keep being. We keep surrendering. We keep trusting and taking the steps we're guided to take, being our creative, badass warrior goddess selves. And we just, especially singing, like, let's keep singing. Let's keep singing. And boom, those walls are coming down because that promised land is ours. You know, like, the story is the same. It's the same story forever and ever. We're bringing in heaven on earth. Like, that's just what it is. Like, that's, I mean, we know it. We know that we came here to anchor in a blueprint of the place that we've already existed within, that we came here to just like infiltrate this place and be like, actually, earth can be this place too. Boom. Sing it down. We're singing it down.
Amen.
All are just right.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Sing it over.
Yeah.
Oh, let me.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have done without you guys during this time. You know, I said it before, but I guess since we're officially recording, maybe it will be nothing, but maybe it will be something. So I feel like I really just want to remind you guys like how special this is, that we are really lucky to have stumbled upon something that feels the most nourishing during a time when we're really having to sit in our own selves with our own selves. Most of us, many of us, you know, have, life has maybe gotten a bit crazier, but I think for the majority of us, I should say, I think that it's been a time of slowing down. You know, during this pandemic, everybody's lives are shifted. I mean, some things came to like a screeching halt, my job included. And so it's just been an interesting time, because I've never sat with myself so much, you know, just letting the thoughts come up and really been being a little bit, I have more time to think before I react. I've led such an impulsive life. When my emotions were big or something would trigger me, or I always felt like I had to respond right away. But living, you know, alone right now, you know, when things are coming up, I can't react right away. You know, I mean, texting can be dangerous, but in general, you know, it might be a few days before I interact with somebody, or so I don't know. And during that time, it can become overwhelming, you know, to sit with. I think in Baccara, whatever her name is, this Instagram presence, you know, that does a collective tarot card reading on Sundays. I remember in one of her readings, she was saying, now we all have to sit in our own houses, and hopefully we're gonna stay home. And when we leave our homes, they'll be better when we went in, you know, like kind of when we went into ourselves and into our homes. Through this process, we're going to be leaving our home better than when we found it, because we're tending to it. And Gayatri, in that video, you know, the last call we were on, I think it was so important what you said, is because we're all slowing down, we're able to do these things and put in effort and attention into these places or relationships or circumstances that we were just too busy to deal with before, because we were just busy doing everything, because that's what we've kind of grown up doing. That's been the norm. There's always things to do. There's always tons of distractions. And now is a less distraction. I don't know. I feel a little bit less distracted, I guess. So I've been able to focus. And so you guys just having the structured, knowing that I could come in with whatever I am experiencing or having and be super vulnerable and share with you guys parts of my past or present that I've been ashamed to share with anybody. And all of a sudden, you know, I just met you guys a couple of months ago, some of you, and with what we've created by continuing to come back, you know, we've committed to each other. I mean, commitment sounds like such a scary thing. And it's actually been one of my greatest challenges is, you know, fear of commitment. And so I think the fact that it just has felt easy because we've been willing to trust that we've already been willing to trust the process. I mean, you trusted that it was like, just start. And we started something, and it might be totally different than what we thought it would be, but we're still continuing to practice trusting this process. And I think it's super freaking cool to be able to do it alongside some other, you know, really influential females, and maybe at some point there'll be others in whatever capacity.
I think what you said there is really standing out to me. Just practice, right? Whether it's our meditation, whether it's, physical, mental exercise, in order to be better at it, right? In order to be good at it, in order to trust it, right? In order to trust it, we have to continue to practice it, right? We have to continue to do it. We have to make it part of our daily practice. And so kind of like, making sure that we honor that, making sure that we continue to do that, then it really forms a solid brick foundation that can't necessarily be broken, right? As long as you're continuing to nurture it, as long as you're practicing with it, as long as you're making it a part of your day every day, and the whole thing about just like nurturing your home during this time, I think is super important. All of that, what you're doing and how you're going to walk away from all of this is really, the routines that you set for yourself, the relationships that you nurture during this time is going to be critical to take you into the next phase. So, trust the entire process and build that foundation, make it more of a daily practice. Like, you don't always have to check in with everyone, but, take the time to check in with yourself, take the time to check in with the loved ones, make it part of your daily practice to do so, because I think it's important. So, yeah.
Yeah. I was seeing this image of a caterpillar going into a cocoon, having to trust that this is the right thing to do and the right timing, and being in that cocoon for a question mark amount of time, and a lot of things happening, and it really feeling like death, and there is some death, and it has to lose its entire structure and become something else, and then at some point it breaks out of that cocoon, and it's like, ooh, this is really different and really sensitive, and I have to like wait here a minute and let my wings dry off, but then hey, the wind comes and now I can fly.
That's so funny that you use that, because we were actually looking at the formation of a butterfly recently, and it was so crazy and wild to me. And I'm just like, wow, is that what's happening here right now?
Totally. That's absolutely what's happening.
Yeah.
We are all in a cocoon right now. It's interesting because I have this modality that I've been creating with the aerial hammock that I call the cocoon, which is the womb cocoon. And it's like a hands-on thing where you go inside and you're inside the womb. But so I think of this word cocoon. It's not just a cocoon. It's not just a womb. It's both. Because it's not just a place of birth. It's a place of transformation. It's a place of death. It's a place, like everything is happening here. We're like going from one version of reality to a completely other reality. Like nothing will ever be the same. Like we come out with new eyes.
Yeah.
New bodies with new everything. Yeah.
Aww.
So funny. I went to a party in like January, went out dancing with some girls, and one of them put this in my hair, and I haven't gotten it back to her yet, but she was like, oh, you can just hold on to it. But I wrote a little poem, actually. I don't know if I can pull it up right now, but exactly about that feeling. It was like, I want to read this real quick.
So funny. We've actually been doing origami, and one of the patterns is a butterfly pattern, and I've been trying so hard to practice it, right? To practice it, because it's something that I want to accomplish. For some reason, I look at the tattoo on my back is a butterfly also, but like, that has a lot of symbolism for me and meaning. But like every time I see this image of the butterfly in the origami book that we're practicing with, I'm like, I really want to do this. Like it's a very difficult one to do also, but so yeah, butterflies definitely resonate with me.
Transformation.
Did you find the poem?
Oh,
I did.
can I just say one more thing about butterflies real quick? You know how we say like when we're like stepping into a place where it's like, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach. That's such a like trust place too, isn't it? It's like, I
Mhm.
mean, yeah, like excitement or whatever, but I feel like when I'm coming into a place where it's like, whoa, my trust is being activated right now, it can feel like butterflies in my
Mhm.
stomach, or that's what we call it anyways. So just all the butterfly connections are
Mhm.
interesting to me right now.
Mhm.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I'm more of a moth person, but I do relate
The
to,
nighttime butterfly.
yes,
Yeah.
the more it's like feminine moon following, like furry little creatures. So yeah, this came out the other day. I was just sitting in the sunshine, I think on Sunday. It says, sun on my skin, I am found once again, shining but unsure of what's shown. Once wild, leashed by my hand, free within confines, but that's how it has to be. A cocoon confines and changes you with time. I willingly surrender and submit to mine. Release, surrender, allow, trust. These words ring again, and I know that I must do what I can where I am with what I have. This is all that can be done, no matter life's circumstance.
Mm.
Who wrote that?
It just came through me the other day. I was just sitting in the sun. Yeah.
Magic.
That's beautiful.
I didn't realize how appropriate it is until right now. I was
Yeah.
like, oh wow, look at that. I wrote a poem for the theme of trust in the right month.
I just won this the other day.
Oh wow.
Oh,
Look at
yes.
that.
Can't really see it, but it's gorgeous.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's so cool.
Just hung it.
That's amazing.
My
Hmm.
friend just asked me, she's homeschooling her kids, and she called me and said, hey, I was thinking about getting caterpillars for my kids, like to show them the transformation process. Do you think it's a good idea? And I was like, well, yeah, I think it's a great idea. Why wouldn't it be a good idea? And she's like, well, we wanted to take some caterpillars from outside, and bring them in, but I don't know, I felt uncomfortable about it. And she said, and my son, he doesn't want to do monarchs. He wants to do like some really exotic, like incredible butterfly from like some far off place. And so I shared with her kind of, I was like, do you really want my thoughts? Well, if you take caterpillars from inside, from outside and you bring them in, it's going to be an important conversation to share with your kids and to help them understand and work with you to recreate the environment that they're in. If you're taking them from the wild and you're putting them inside, you want to make sure that they have everything that they would have had out there in here. And then we were talking about what an incredible lesson it is, actually. The cocoons, the chrysalises of monarch butterflies are like insane. There's gold. Like, have you guys ever seen them? They're green and they have gold spots along it. They're amazingly beautiful. And then really what's happening inside is that caterpillar is decomposing and turning into mush, dying, so that it can reform into this butterfly. It's absolutely amazing to watch it. And friends, they were doing it with their daughter. And so I got to actually Matthew and Olivia, one of where they were living, they had them, and I was like, oh my God, this Christmas is amazing. But so anyways, the other thing I was saying is a good lesson, because now people have the opportunity to homeschool, which means you have the opportunity to teach your kids what's important to know. Like, what are the things that are important? Is what happened in 1912, is that super, super important? Like on May 8th, I don't know, maybe it is, but I forgot it once I took the test and answered correctly, but anyways, the other thing was like, okay, we often want this big, beautiful thing, like we could get caterpillars imported from somewhere else, and raise them, and they're in this cool cocoon, and then they hatch. But then what do we do with it? You release it into the wild, but you've done something for you and for your enjoyment. But does that butterfly really have a chance to survive? It's not in its environment. What does it eat? Are there going to be plants for it? Like, is it going to have others of its kind or if it is part of if it's not like a solitary species? So I think it's really cool because we really can, there are lessons inside lessons inside lessons, for me personally, as an environmental educator previously, that was the most beautiful thing about teaching outdoors, was that there are lessons everywhere, from the birds in the sky and how the clouds are forming, to like how water is rushing and the seasonal changes. It's just, from the tiniest microorganisms, and you're teaching about fungus that are literally like their root system is everywhere, literally connects everything. And they're decomposing trees, you know? I mean, so there's this interesting relationship because it's like, well, are they killing the trees or are they just transforming the tree, you know, back into soil essentially? So I don't know. These are crazy times and there's a lot that we could find wrong. And there's definitely people who are suffering now. But like anything, there's some real beauty that's available to us now that just wasn't before, you know, in our own homes, with our own families, if we have them.
Now we have the opportunity to actually look at the institution of suffering, like our choice as a human collective to play out these paradigms in which suffering is something that we choose. Like we're choosing annihilation, we're choosing war, we're choosing, you know, suffering on so many levels, and we get to choose in this ascension, in this evolution process. Are we going to continue that and or destroy ourselves, or are we going to choose something that we haven't tried yet? Are we going to choose bliss? Are we going to choose connection? Are we going to choose to evolve and really live what we know is possible in this lifetime? That's really exciting to me. And I feel like that's, you know, this whole pause is giving us, like, whether we're consciously super aware of it or not, like we're all going through all of this in our beings. And it's interesting because I've even noticed, like, I've been watching movies, like the movies are all talking about it too. And you can watch a movie that has like really intense, like thrilling, like, you know, lots of killing and lots of wars and fighting and all that. Or you can watch something that's like, wow, that actually made me feel really good. And I feel like I just learned something. And like, wow, I do have superpowers. And like, you know, it's like we get to choose what we're feeding ourselves. We get to choose what we're speaking. We get to choose how we're relating with each other. And I love that right now people are having a choice to educate their children about what is real. Because when you were talking about this, I was remember taking these standardized tests and I was like, oh my gosh, it's such a like program, like it's like, oh my gosh, it's total like brainwash central over there. And like, who knows what's really real, but like our hearts know what's real. And the public school system has just gotten too big for, I don't know. I think this is perfect timing. Anyways, everything's it's all perfect timing.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the referencing of your story, Susie, with whitewater rafting and just letting it consume you, and then trust that, you know, throughout it all, you're gonna get spit back out, but you're gonna be okay. Right? And it's just like the same caterpillar, like you just got to trust it. And when they break free, when they nibble out of that chrysalis, right, they're going out of that cocoon, like it'll be okay. Like it will be okay. So
Even better than okay.
That's an interesting thought too. Like, when does it know that it's ready to break through and it nibbles its way out?
Yeah.
Like, interesting.
Nibbles is the way out.
Think about it, that's everything that comes in. Other, like, humans, we think that it's just like we're like pushed out, but it must be a choice of ours to like, okay, now I'm ready. I mean, unless we're pulled out. But you know, chickens, when they're hatching from their eggs, like in fourth grade, I remember we were watching our duck eggs, and it took like a day to hatch out of their egg. Like when they started trying to poke through and they got exhausted, and others were just like, boom, one crack and it like split and they're out. So it's so fascinating that it's like, yeah, was that their choice? What told them they were ready? Had they been trying and trying and trying and then finally busted through? Like, what is it?
When the kittens were being born, I witnessed that happen. The first 3 were practically fighting to come out. And then the next, you know, there were 8 kittens that came out. The last one took like 3 extra hours. And I felt the thing. I felt this baby move its way down into place. Like it had to choose to crawl down into place to come out. So like we absolutely, I mean, what an incredible thing to witness, first of all. But like, I feel like that's the same, like in the human birth process, the baby has to turn its head.
and
It has to
drop.
make an action. It has to do that itself. Like it's a
Some babies
co-creative
don't turn their
process.
head.
Right. And that's, I mean, that's when you have complications and whatever.
Well,
But
yeah, but you know, like no, because I had the same problem with Shiv, but like he was born sunny, he was sunny side up, and so they had to manually turn him. But they
Sunny
really, what is it?
Did you just say sunny side up?
I was like, I had
Yeah.
sunny side up eggs today. They were delicious.
in the wrong.
I never heard that. I didn't know they called
Yeah.
it hilarious.
It was turned the other way, and it was 36 hours of labor, of like, yeah, it was crazy. But no, like, you know, even throughout pregnancy, you know, the baby's high, right? Like when sometimes you see a pregnant woman, the belly's really high, but then they drop, right? And that's like, hey, okay, things are starting to move in the direction that life is going to be formed. Scratch that, edit that, edit that out, because that's not right. Life is formed like from conception in my perspective. But like, you know, the birthing process and, you know, all of that happens. And so so human beings definitely sometimes may be forced out of it, right? Forced out. Some may naturally just kind of come out. And I think that listening to all of this and listening to like more of like the birthing process, like sometimes we can be really stubborn and have to be pushed,
Or pulled.
right? All right, like we're currently being put. I'm looking at everybody because we're all in this together. You know, we've been pushed into, this is what I was saying before, we've been pushed into this new realm. Some are adjusting to it really, you know, naturally and organically and kind of going with the flow and kind of like taking it day by day. And then, you know, you have others who are not adjusting or adapting well to the change. And I think that, you know, it's just like this birthing process that we're all going through, or this rebirthing process, right? That we're all going through. And some people are going to let it go and let it take them. And others might have to be pushed a little bit harder, maybe turn, maybe bouncing on a ball, whatever it may be, to kind of get them to come through.
Maybe C-section.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm thinking
Sometimes.
about it too. Like, it's also the dying process. Some people go gently and willingly, and you know, some of us will fight and resist. And there's this really beautiful book at the Unitarian Church when I was going. They would always read a children's book to introduce what the content of kind of their version of the sermon would be. So everybody was present for the children's book, and then the children would like go and do their own thing, and then the adults, you know, it would be this more adult conversation, and they were talking about death. And so real quickly, the book was called The Fall of Freddie the Leaf, and I wish I could say the author because it is a beautiful book. Look it up if you have children and you're needing to kind of open up discussion about life and death. And it was so beautiful because it was all about this little leaf, Freddie. And, you know, he starts out as a bud in the springtime, and then he like opens up and he's got this leaf, and then there's other leaves that start to come out, and they're all his like leaf friends on this branch. And one of them was like older. It was like before before Freddie was there, this one older leaf, Daniel, he was like there, and he just seemed wiser than the rest. And so then they go through summertime, and they're like shading all the kids that are playing in the park, and they're feeling the sunshine. And so then fall comes around, and the nights start getting really cold. And, you know, Freddie the leaf is, you know, he's starting to get like really cold at night, and he notices that one of the leaves is gone the next morning. He's like, Daniel, where did that leaf go? You know? And so Daniel starts to tell him, you know, that, well, it's fall, and, you know, all of us will actually go. The wind will take all of us. And, you know, so he's kind of opening up this discussion about death. And so one by one, Freddie's, you know, friends, they like get plucked from the branch, or they fall, because he noticed that some of them, there'd be a gust of wind and some leaves would hold on really tight. And then other leaves, you know, the wind would just come by and take them. And so it was just Freddie and Daniel on the branch. And, you know, it was getting so much colder, and Freddie's so scared. And he's like, Daniel, I'm afraid to go. Like, what's going to happen, you know? And he's like, why do we have to die? You know, why do we have to leave? And Daniel just said, you know, he's like, well, what's it all for? You know, if we're just going to die, why do we even live in the first place? And Daniel just says, do you remember the cool rains of spring? Do you remember how that felt? And he's like, yeah. It's like, do you remember how it felt when you saw the little people, you know, the people down below and you knew you were shading them, and when you felt the breeze come by? And do you remember the sun? Do you remember feeling the sun on your skin? You know, and Daniel, and, you know, Freddie's like, yeah. And Daniel's like, that's why you live. Those moments, like, this is why we live. And he said, and you'll know that we all will die, and we'll all become part of the tree of life. You know, like, we'll all kind of return to the soil, and then the soil will feed the roots of the tree. And, you know, Freddie couldn't really understand the tree, like, what, we're a part of something bigger, because he only knew his branch, he only knew what was around him. So then it came time, and it was a really cold wind, and he just let go, you know. And as he's falling down, he looks up and he sees the whole tree for the first time of his life. And he realizes, I'm going to become part of it again. Like, I'm going to become part of the soil. I'm going to feed the roots. And actually, you know, you don't really die. You're always living through this tree. It's like bigger than you.
Circle of life.
Mm-hmm.
I was about to start singing that.
Yeah, well, I think songs should be, I mean, we have to have like entry music, exit music, right? Like the podcast has.
Fade out.
Yeah, buddy.
I know, does anybody know?
The only one I know is Hakuna Matata.
That's a good one too.
Well, I think this is a perfect place to kind of wrap up. I'm getting a little sleepy, and I think we've gotten some really good stuff. So I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you all for watching and being here.
Quiet now, I will tell you a story. Hush a while and let me say, it's not a tall tale, it's a true story.